exist? A question humans have been asking and debating since the dawn of humanity itself. And so today we'll be looking at the philosophy of teleology and its argument for God, also known as the intelligent design argument. But to first see how intelligent design can prove God and why it works and why the argument doesn't work, we must first look at the philosophy it's based on, which is that of teleology. Then, what is teleology, the philosophy that this whole argument is based on? Teleology is a philosophy that everything has a built-in purpose, and this purpose can be found by observing the object and observing our world. This was first this was first proposed by Plato, who developed the four main causes to deduce an object's purpose based on observing it. The first cause is a material cause that refers to what an object is made out of. So let's take the example of a chair. The material cause is the metal and wood that makes up the chair. Next is the formal cause. The formal cause is a structure that defines the object. So in the case of a chair, it's only a chair because it has the shape of a chair. It has four legs, it has a seat, maybe a backrest. That's what makes it a chair. The efficient cause is to look at how or why did this come into existence. So for in the case of the chair, the efficient cause of the chair is the chair maker or a carpenter who made the chair. And the final cause is the purpose of this. And this can be found by looking at the previous causes. So for example, the final cause of a chair is to be sat on. And so if we look at the material cause, the materials are strong enough so that you can sit on it. So that works. The formal cause, it's in the shape that you can sit on it and it doesn't fall over, or when you move side to side, it doesn't tip over. So that works for its purpose. The efficient cause also works as a carpenter made it for the purpose to be sat on. So then if we look at all three causes, it adds up to the final cause, which is as this chair is meant to be sat on. This is the basis of teleology and the foundation of the argument of intelligent design. So now that we've briefly looked at the philosophy behind intelligent design, that of teleology, we can look at intelligent design and what it is. So intelligent design has that same base of teleology, that a purpose can be found by observing an object. And so if this is true, what intelligent design does is it observes nature and sees how complex and intricate it is, and sees how that's intelligently designed. And so by that logic, it should have an intelligent creator. And this plays into the watchmaker's example, which is the most common argument of intelligent design. It says that, say you found a watch on the ground in nature, and you picked it up, you looked at its material, you looked at the glass, you took it apart, you saw its different gears, how it perfectly keeps time. You would have to assume that a watchmaker must have made this, as nature couldn't have just made this watch. It's too complicated. The gears fit together too perfectly. It keeps time too perfectly. And then, so what intelligent design is, it gets that logic and applies it to nature, as nature is even more complex than any watch, and has so many more pieces and so many more gears, comparing nature to a machine like a watch. And if the watch must have a watchmaker, why doesn't nature have a creator? And so it says, based on how complex nature is, it must have an intelligent creator who's just as intricate and complex as its nature itself. So then, what are the arguments against intelligent design? And the main opposition to intelligent design comes from the work of David Hume. And David Hume has three main arguments that oppose intelligent design. The first argument is that David Hume doesn't accept the watchmaker and machine analogy. He says that nature cannot be a machine and is not the same as a machine, as machines have multiple creators, and they aren't just made. Let's say if you look at an engine, right? an engine wasn't just made a year ago and we've discovered it, and it doesn't have one creator. You can trace its history of engines all the way back hundreds of years to the steam engine. And from the steam engine, thousands of different designers and engineers have developed and twink have tinkered the engine and made it better and better and better until we have what powers our cars to today. So then what he says is the universe isn't like this. There's no other universes. We don't see prototypes of the universe that we can observe. And what intelligent design says is that there's only one creator, not multiple deities. So he says that the whole argument falls apart because he doesn't accept the analogy that nature works like a machine because machines aren't just made by one sole thing. His second point is that if intelligent design were to be true, the creator of intelligent design could not be perfect because the world is not perfect. So let's say I built an engine, and this if you looked at this engine, it'd be horrible and it would not work because I'm not a mechanic. And so if you see this terrible, horrible working engine, you'd have to assume that its engineer or who made it is an incompetent mechanic, which would be true because I'm a horrible mechanic. And so what David Hume says is that this same logic applies to intelligent design, as our world is not perfect. We have evil, we have all these horrible things that people do. And even beyond that, there are so many things that are unnecessary in our world that don't necessarily have a purpose. So then, if our world is flawed, its creator must also be flawed. And so, take for example, our trinkets or random stuff that we have on our desks. They have no purpose. And if something has no purpose in our world, then clearly our creator did something wrong. So then what Hume says is if there is a creator, he's not perfect and he is flawed because our world is flawed. The third point of Hume is that we don't have any data sets to prove intelligent design. And what he means by this is we only have one universe. So, say for example, you saw lightning strike for the first time ever, and you've never heard about lightning before. You would assume something crazy like a god is angry and has just done that. Because you're like, whoa, this random giant light has just struck in the earth and it's caused a fire. But then after you see lightning multiple times, can you start observing it and realize, oh, this is how it works? I get it. And the same applies for intelligent design. We only have one universe, so the initial assumption we have by observing it has to be wrong because we don't have multiple data sets, just like the initial assumption of the lightning was wrong because you've only seen it once. Another example of this is gravity. Say you drop something and it fell twice the speed of gravity, but it never happened again. You could never prove that gravity goes twice as fast because the next time you drop something, it only falls once. So, because of this, we don't know how complex our universe is because we've never seen another universe, right? Like, for example, a bicycle looks very complex until you compare it to a motorcycle. Just like that, we don't know our universe could be primitive compared to another one, but since we only have one, all our assumptions about our universe are innately wrong because we don't have any data points. Another opposition of intelligent design that I like to cover is that of Immanuel Kant, who accepts the analogy of nature as a machine, unlike David Hume's, but then he says, fine, say God is a watchmaker and the world is his watch. The watchmaker didn't fully make the watch. He simply assembled it. He put all the gears together, the glass, whatever, the leather strap. He did all that, but he didn't physically conjure the glass. He had to buy that from a glassmaker. He didn't buy the gears. He needed to go to the shop and get them. And so just like this, we can assume, fine, God assembled the universe and made all the rules and made the ecosystems function correctly, but we can't assume he created the universe just as the watchmaker didn't physically create the watch. So he might have put our world together, but he didn't physically make all the elements, and he couldn't have physically made all that. He simply is just the person who puts it all together. So this brings me all to my final point, which is what if there was another version of teleology, another version of the intelligent design argument that better fits all its counter arguments, and it would be easier for people who are against teleology to get behind. This is the theory of the natural God, which states, just like teleology, that if you observe nature and everything works so well together and so in sync and is so complex, that nature itself is a God, is the God. And so it's still the teleological philosophy that everything has a purpose, but the only difference is instead of an outwardly divine purpose, it's an inwardly divine purpose, and that things are so interconnected and so complex and work so well together that it is just one thing. Just like how all the gears of the watch just become the watch. They're no longer separate. We are no longer separate. And nature and life itself is all one thing. And that's what gives us purpose. Because if everything is God, then everything has purpose. And this can even be backed by science in a way, because that is how, from what we know of the Big Bang, is how our universe started. That everything was one dense ball of mass that expanded into our universe, and everything has energy in it. That's why even the smallest of atoms or particles have energy still in them. And that's why atoms and different elements have different masses, because they have different amounts of energy with them. So it still allows for the teleological philosophy of everything has a purpose, but it better is more abstract. And so you don't have to believe in this big godly figure that people can't get behind, and instead is just, if everything has purpose and God gives purpose, then how is God not everything? And so that brings me to the end of this video. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope any concepts I've talked about encourage you to research more about them, as there are way more qualified people than me that can tell you about these things. Thank you.